was working as a truck driver when the victim was murdered.
It was just before dawn on May 26, 2012, in the quiet countryside of southeastern Iowa. A light breeze drifted across the open fields, and a faint orange glow pressed against the horizon. Most of the small town community was still asleep, unaware that their peaceful morning was about to be shattered. Beyond the gravel road, tucked behind a well-kept lawn, stood a modest farmhouse. It looked like any other rural home, ordinary and unremarkable. Inside, Lisa Teckel, a young, pregnant woman, lay asleep, unaware of the danger lurking nearby. At exactly 5:55 a.m., a chilling silence was broken by a desperate 911 call. Lisa's husband, Seth Teckel, was on the line, his voice frantic. He claimed that an intruder had entered their home and shot his wife while she was sleeping. Within minutes, law enforcement and paramedics rushed to the scene. Lisa was found gravely wounded in the couple's bedroom. Despite all efforts to save her, it was too late. The farmhouse, once a place of love and dreams, had become a crime scene. At exactly 5:55 a.m., a frantic call came through to emergency dispatch. The voice on the other end belonged to Seth Teckel, a young husband who sounded panicked and breathless. "Someone broke into our house. My wife, she's been shot," he cried. Dispatchers tried to calm him down and asked urgent questions. Was she still breathing? Did he see the shooter? Seth claimed he had been in the shower when he heard the gunshot. He rushed out and found his wife, Lisa, bleeding in their bedroom. First responders arrived within minutes. The farmhouse, surrounded by open fields, was eerily quiet. Inside, they found Lisa lying unresponsive on the bed. She had been shot once, and though she was still warm to the touch, she showed no signs of life. Seth, visibly shaken, repeated his story: an intruder had killed his wife. But as officers scanned the scene, doubts started creeping in. There were no signs of forced entry. No footprints outside. No signs of a struggle. Something wasn't adding up. When officers stepped into the Teckel farmhouse, something felt off. Lisa lay motionless in bed, a single gunshot wound in her body. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken windows, no disturbed furniture, nothing to suggest a violent struggle. If an intruder had really been there, why was everything so neat? Seth pointed to the back door, claiming it had been left open. But investigators found no footprints in the damp grass outside, no mud tracked into the house. How could a fleeing killer leave no trace? As officers examined the scene, more inconsistencies emerged. The weapon used, a shotgun, belonged to the household. Nothing appeared stolen. Even Lisa's belongings remained untouched. If robbery wasn't the motive, what was? Forensics teams began their work, analyzing bullet trajectories and blood patterns. Early findings suggested Lisa had been shot at close range, something uncommon in random home invasions. Was this really the work of a mysterious intruder? Or was the real threat much closer to home? At first, Seth Teckel played the role of a grieving husband too well. He sobbed, repeated his story, and pointed fingers at a neighbor he claimed had a grudge. But detectives weren't convinced. His timeline had gaps, and his emotions felt forced rather than genuine. When police examined his phone records, red flags appeared. In the weeks leading up to Lisa's murder, Seth had been exchanging messages with another woman. Their conversations hinted at a romantic relationship, one Seth had carefully hidden. Investigators also uncovered internet searches on gunshot wounds, home invasions, and crime scene cleanups, disturbing clues pointing to premeditation. Witnesses began stepping forward, recalling Seth's recent nervous behavior. A neighbor had seen him pacing outside the farmhouse late at night. A coworker remembered him being unusually tense. Slowly, the pieces started fitting together. This wasn't a random attack. Lisa's killer may have been inside the house all along. By the time Seth Teckel stood trial, the small Iowa town was in shock. Could a husband really murder his pregnant wife in cold blood? Prosecutors believed the answer was yes, and they had the evidence to prove it. In court, the prosecution laid out a chilling case. They showed text messages between Seth and another woman, revealing an affair. They presented forensic evidence proving Lisa was shot at close range, not by a fleeing intruder. The shotgun used? It belonged to Seth. His internet searches on crime scenes and gunshot wounds painted a sinister picture. The defense tried to shift suspicion elsewhere, claiming police rushed to blame Seth and ignored other possible suspects. They argued that the evidence was circumstantial. But when experts debunked Seth's version of events, including his claim that he was in the shower when Lisa was shot, the jury began to see the truth. After intense deliberation, the verdict was read: guilty. Seth's mask of grief shattered. Justice had been served, but the scars left behind would never fully heal. After weeks of emotional testimony and damning evidence, the jury finally reached a decision: guilty. As the verdict was read, a hush fell over the courtroom. Lisa's family held each other, tears streaming down their faces. Justice had been served, but nothing could bring Lisa or her unborn child back. Seth Tekel was sentenced to life in prison without parole, a fate far from the life of freedom he had imagined. His plan, to escape his responsibilities and start fresh, had unraveled completely. The same digital footprints he thought he could erase had sealed his fate. Outside the courthouse, the small town of Agency, Iowa, struggled to process the tragedy. How could someone so familiar, so trusted, commit such a brutal act? Friends and neighbors who once saw Seth as a devoted husband now saw a manipulative killer. Lisa's family channeled their grief into honoring her memory. A scholarship in her name was established, helping students who shared her dream of public service. Though the trial had ended, Lisa's story, and the lessons it carried, would never be forgotten. Lisa Tekel's murder shook the town of Agency, Iowa, to its core. This wasn't a crime committed by a stranger in the night. It was a betrayal from within. People who once felt safe leaving their doors unlocked now questioned everything. How had no one seen the warning signs? In the aftermath, discussions about domestic violence, hidden abuse, and trust became more urgent. Law enforcement agencies improved training on digital forensics, recognizing that modern crimes often leave invisible clues, texts, searches, and secret messages. Lisa's family turned their pain into purpose. They advocated for stronger resources for women in unsafe relationships, ensuring no one else felt trapped or unheard. A small scholarship was created in Lisa's name, helping others pursue careers in law enforcement, the path she once dreamed of. Though years passed, Lisa's story remained a reminder. Evil doesn't always come from the outside. Sometimes, it's the person standing right beside you. The tragedy left scars, but it also left behind lessons that would protect future generations. Lisa's memory would never fade.